Jess, I know this month we're talking about who we were and who we're becoming, and it made me think about um, a family gathering. And I'm sure this happened to many of you, but it got me thinking about it in this topic. Someone that you've known your whole life, somebody that I knew most of my life, or a long time of my life at this point, introduced me to someone else. And the way they described me was accurate to like who I used to be or like who I
Yeah.
was. I kind of played along. I'm definitely a people pleaser, so it's very easy for me to like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And inside I was like, that's not really who I am. But then it made me realize how perhaps others see me or how others get stuck in this definition of who you are without truly knowing you in your current state. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think there can be tension there
Yes.
about how you get to define who you are.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think most women have that exact moment. Maybe not at a family event, maybe just in their own heads, but the version of you that exists in other people's minds versus the
Yes.
version you're actually living. So,
Yes.
welcome back to Chasing Brighter. I'm Jessica and this is Kelly. And this is our identity and expectation months. And we are starting right in the middle of it.
Yes. We are. So, really what we want to talk about today is this idea of like, let's name what this actually feels like, because I don't think there's like one big moment where you become a quote unquote different person. It's very gradual. It's a slow drift. And then one day you sort of look up and you realize that you've been kind of quietly going in this direction. And maybe your outside life doesn't feel aligned with that,
Yeah. And
if
I
that
think
makes sense.
identity shifts are rarely dramatic. Like you were saying, they happen in small decisions and
Yes.
margins and what you stop tolerating, what you start wanting. And I think the people who love you have a vested interest in knowing who you are, and it can feel unsettling to them if you are changing. I think about even to all the roles we have, right? So many of our extended family of origin knows us as children, right? And then we became adults, and then we became married, and then we became parents. And a parent of a young child is different than a parent of a teenager. And now we're in midlife and we own our own businesses. And so you get described back to yourself as who you used to be, and you're expected to be in patterns that you've grown out of. And so then we have that pull. Do I play the role to keep things smooth, or do I insist on being seen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Think
And
about oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, you keep going.
Like, who do you think, how would you describe, oh, okay, so let's piss each other off. This is going to really piss each other. I want you to describe me 10 years ago. I want you to describe Jessica 10 years ago.
Well, Jessica 10 years ago was tired and had 3 kids, and the youngest one was young enough that it required a lot of her time. She was drained and she was trying to do a lot of things at once. And in some ways, maybe she was so focused on keeping it together, but really not taking care of herself. And it just was very depleting for her.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say Kelly 10 years ago, Kelly was not much different than 10 years ago, Jessica, just as far as being depleted. I know when your boys were very young, your husband's business took a lot. Like he was, I don't want to say like early in his business, but I'm going to say early in
Yeah.
his business. So he was like working 6, sometimes 7. This is me making up. I didn't live your experience. 6, 7 days a week. And then you were left managing the household and raising the children and doing all of these things. And so I feel like you were also depleted and extended, but you don't bitch and moan like your sister did, right? You just like, I feel like took it on quietly.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting having this conversation. And, it would be interesting for anyone who's listening to even, whether it's a sibling or a best friend to have this conversation, just to be curious, like
Yeah.
what they would say.
Yeah.
I've been nostalgic lately because since my father-in-law passed away, we're looking at a lot of old pictures and things. And
Yeah.
you know how you look at a picture of yourself, 5, 10, 15 years ago, and it's so different. And you kind of are like, who was I back then versus how I am today? And so,
Yeah.
I think a lot of us women keep choosing to kind of keep things running smooth for a really long time. I know that was myself
Yeah.
because it's easier and it doesn't require those difficult conversations.
Mhm.
And I think both you and I went through that, right? Where we did that. And then it just,
Yeah.
at some point, we realized it didn't work. And, there becomes this really huge gap for a lot of us between, who you're performing to be versus who actually you are. And it gets to a point that it's like too big to ignore.
Yeah, that gap gets too big. And I think what's interesting when we describe each other, I think it's like we talk all the time and I think we're in tune to each other. So I think like we know who we are now. And I've gotten feedback from you about noticing all the work I've done and noticing the changes that I've done. And so but I think in friendships, for me, where this has played out, so I'm an overfunctioner, an overachiever. And so the expectations from my friends to take on things, even if it's last minute, and they're like, oh, hey, can you help me do this? Or hey, you know what I mean? And it's like, I'm not that person anymore. Right? So
Yeah.
do I just say yes and do the thing and help them? Or is it the new evolved boundary setting, Jessica? What do you kind of do in those situations?
It's definitely tough. I used to be for many of my friend groups, I was the planner. I was the organizer. I was the coordinator. And when I started to kind of step back from that, just because of whatever, it slowly was too much for me. I didn't have time. There were other things that became my priorities. My values shifted a little bit. I love spending time with them, but I don't want to be the planner all the time. And I found that nobody else was doing the planning, right? Or like it sort of
Mhm.
had to like recalibrate itself, and it shifted my friendships in a way that I don't get to see people as much as I used to,
Oh, totally. Yeah, because you're setting
right?
boundaries and you don't have time to
Yeah, but I
yeah.
really don't have time. And so in order for
Mhm.
me to get together, it's like me being
Yeah.
that person. I do love when I have friends who are so proactive on wanting to get together, right? Because
Yeah.
then it's like, okay, they're doing the work and not me. Not saying that I'm grateful for that. I probably need to tell certain friends that I'm grateful for that when they do take that initiative because I do find myself doing it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be either or. Sometimes there's a gray area,
Right.
but it is about like, like we've talked about before, is looking at those our boundaries, but really who are you now? And are you living that type of, what does that gap look like, I guess? So,
Yeah.
hey, quick pause, Jess. We want to share with our listeners that we have a amazing free download this month, and it goes hand in hand with everything we're talking about in May. It's called the Real Over Perfect Weekly Check-In, and it's 5 questions, 5 minutes, once a week. Do it with your Sunday morning coffee, but it's exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah, and it's free when you sign up for our newsletter at chasingbrighter.com. Honestly, it really is one of my favorite things that we've made so far. So go get it. So, Kel, like you were talking about, it's like this shift. So, we're talking about the gap from who you are to who people think you are, right? And so the gap is not really the problem, right? The gap between who people expect and who you're becoming is not a crisis, right? It's just evidence that you're growing. And some people will update their picture of you as you grow, like I feel like you
Yeah,
and I have
that's a
for
good
each
point.
other,
Yeah.
and some won't. And that's information about the relationship, about whether the growth was valid. So this is like highlighting. You and I've been talking for years about friendships changing. And I think that's like some of my stuckness, is that some people just aren't updating their information about me. And you don't have to announce this evolution to everyone. You just can keep moving and living forward. Evolving doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means that you're paying attention. I think about like what is one way that either one of us are different now that people closest to us have embraced. This is interesting. Oh, okay. I would say like me setting boundaries and working out all the time, has been great. And so some people closest to me are really, I don't know, supportive and cheerleading of that. How about for you? Like, what's a way that you're different now that people closest to you have embraced?
Um,
No one likes the new Kelly.
I would
Um,
say one of the big things, and we haven't talked about our marriages and how our relationships has changed with our spouses, but one of the biggest things for me and my growth has been the fact that I used to really neglect my feelings. And so I do a better job now of like really truly feeling the feels. And I think Brian enjoys that, observing me feeling my
yeah,
feels in a way
your
that he's
partner.
very encouraging,
Yeah,
even if it's uncomfortable for me, and just feeling very much like I can be vulnerable with him in that way. And it's fine, right? It's
yeah.
not like a bad thing or good thing. It just is. And so I would say that would be an example. That's a heavy one.
And I think, well, like, it's like, is there a version of you that someone still sees as the old Kelly or the old Jessica that we've quietly outgrown? This is to me so highlighted when we go back to see family, right? Like, so for me, I think when I went back to a few funerals, and it's more kind of some cousins I don't stay in contact with as much. And I'm obviously not 6 years old. And so it really is kind of triggering or activating when you see people and they're like, "Oh my God, you're so crazy. You are so crazy, or you have like such a big mouth, or whatever it is." And it's like, dude, was 6 or 7. I don't know if you feel that way when you see our extended family. Did they hold on to something that you've outgrown?
100%.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a narrative there
Mm-hmm.
that for a while I fought the narrative. Like I
Mm-hmm.
overcompensated for the narrative, which is like, I think for some of our family, there's this view that I think I'm better than everybody else because I was always sort of like ambitious and had this drive to want to do things.
Yeah.
And it is held in this negative connotation for some
Yeah.
family members.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while, college, early years, I spent so much time trying to fit in, for lack of a
Yeah.
better word, and like be like overcompensate for them thinking that. So then I tried hard to make them not think that. Whereas now, I just don't care. Like I am a
Yeah.
very different person. And I have very different feelings about everything. And I feel like I've learned that, there's no there. You can't have it all. And really just being a happy person, regardless of how much you have, is
Yeah.
the purpose of life. And so I'm now more of like if I start to feel treated that way, that
Yeah.
it's on them. And I just kind of
Yeah.
don't even give myself, like, let it have much weight. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think so too. And I think like there's not like this tidy little resolution, right? We just keep
Yeah.
living, moving forward and keep trying our best and keep showing up. And I think showing the change. And if people don't see it, so with extended family, it is what it is. We
Yeah.
live hundreds, if not thousands of miles away from
Yeah,
a
you
lot of
don't
our
get to
extended
see
family.
them
So
very
it's not
often. Yeah.
whatever, right? I think friendships, maybe even at work, is where it gets more complicated. I think for me, like moments where I catch myself performing the old version of myself, or I would say I have a drive to be like my old self, but I successfully show up as who I am, is with our parents who live here in town. And I'm still like loving internal family systems theory and the parts work. And like, there is a part of me, like, definitely in all relationships where I overfunction, I overachieve, or I caretake, but especially with our family of origin, that kicks in for me. And so there are instances where we're going out to eat and I think, oh my gosh, we should invite mom and dad, or I'm making dinner and mom and dad should come over, or we go to the kids' games and I want to say, oh, you guys should come over and have dinner. And I do not do that. And old
Mm,
Jessica, I even remember, like, I don't even know, one of the kids had a weeknight game and I literally made dinner for everyone and put it in containers and packed it and brought it to that game for mom, for dad, for every single person. And it's like,
just
what am I? And also, our parents are retired now and they don't
yeah.
care. They don't ask this. They don't ask this of me. If I said, can you guys pick up dinner for all of us? Our parents would totally do
Yeah,
that,
they would definitely would. Yeah.
And it's like this fawning response that happens for me where I think I need to take care of everybody. And so I have that response in me all the time, but I see it. I say, hey, response, we're not going to do that. And so I'm proud when I have that, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting how that shift happens, and I think it is really hard when others around may not notice
Yeah.
the shift as well, but you just kind of keep doing the work too.
What's a situation you want to share today?
I would say that there is so my relationship with Wes up
Hmm.
until now has really been up until probably
Yeah.
the
Your
last
15-year-old.
my 15-year-old, when it comes to sports, I've been the one who is really pushing him to perform and achieve and do the work. And, school, that was a lot last year. So both of those two things, whether it's sports or school, um, I pushed him so much last year. And a lot of it was I expected more out of him than he wanted to put the work in, and he had some growing up to do. And this year I've shifted because I've seen that maturity happening. And so I'm kind of taking a step back and letting him drive things. And what's interesting was we had a conversation this week because he's even told his dad that he feels like I put a lot of pressure on him for sports. And so he's going through his own struggles of like, how long do I want to play baseball or whatever it is. And, I told him, and I think he finally believed me, where I was like, it does not matter to me. I don't want to say I don't
Yeah.
care. I think the old way of saying stuff is like, I don't care, but I do
Yeah.
care. I care, but what I'm caring about is you being happy and you
Hmm.
doing something that makes you happy and you following your passions. And it
Yeah.
does not matter to me whether or not you play. And
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
he finally truly believed that, because I feel like I've been feeling that way for a year and it's not sinking in.
Well, I feel like for us, it's like, that's why I tell Gab all the time, quit softball tomorrow. I don't give a shit if you play softball, but if you're going to play softball, you're going to try your best. I think that's where you're coming from. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's like, don't play baseball, Wes. I don't really care. But if you're going to play baseball, you can't play video games all day long. You have to put in some work. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's not what you're saying. But I feel like that's like, you don't care
Um,
that he's doing it. But if he's going to do
I'm
it,
not even
I
that
want to
any,
support you doing it.
it's more like you, if you don't want to play next season, fine, but we
Yeah.
already paid this season, so you've got to finish it out anyway.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's hard with a teenager, by the way, is they have a consistent narrative that is really hard to break and to shift in terms of your
Mhm.
dynamic with your
Mhm.
child.
Yeah.
But paired with that is
Mm.
the diarrhea of the mouth emotions that come out at any given time that you're like, is that a
Yeah.
real emotion? Are you off gassing? How much do you feel about that? And it's anything, right? He said the other day, I hate school. You don't understand. And I was like, he calmed down a little bit. I was like, hey, is there something going on with school? Like, and he's like, no, everything's fine. So I was like, okay. So you know what it is? It's like, it's a little bit of a struggle there. But anyway, so who I'm becoming
Yeah.
and who is
He's
letting my
finally seeing
kids,
it. He's seeing that
yeah,
you're
is letting them
letting
live and
go.
me not
Yeah.
living the life, pushing them to live a life that
Yeah.
they think I want them to
Yes.
have.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's seeing that growth,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? So let's look at our brighter moves for this week. So
Yeah.
what do you have, Kel?
So I want everyone to ask themselves this one question this week. And I think this is a really cool question. A lot of these conversations, again, there's not like a good or a bad, it just is, which is
Yeah.
so, to me, that's really fun. And that's
Mhm.
probably like my own growth, what I've learned. It's like you're afraid of, I was afraid of facing myself for so long, and you don't have to, right? Because you just are. So it's like, the question is, who am I actually quietly becoming. Not who you should be, not who everyone else wants to be, not who you're planning to be. Um, but in this very moment, who are you moving toward right now? And write that down. And it can be anything. And for me, sometimes when I'm answering these questions, I write stuff down and then I'm like, that was not great. And I think about it and I sit with that a little bit more and I kind of like refine what that is.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know, Jess.
No, that's a good one. I like that question. My my suggestion is notice once this week where you're playing an old role that doesn't quite fit anymore. You don't have to do anything about it, just notice it, name it to yourself, and that awareness truly is the beginning of something.
Hmm.
Before we go, we just want to remind you about our free download for May. It's called the Real Over Perfect Weekly Check-In, and this will
Mm-hmm.
really help you along this journey with identity. It's just 5 questions you come back to every single week, and questions about who you are right now, not who you think you should be, not who everyone else needs you to be, just you.
Yeah. And we made it because we needed it ourselves.
Yeah, it just takes 5 minutes. It's free when you sign up for our newsletter, so head to chasingbrighter.com to grab it.
We do really mean that we think you're going to love it if you love these episodes. Don't forget to visit our socials at Chasing Brighter or our blog, chasingbrighter.com.
Yeah, and next week we're going somewhere that I think is going to feel really personal for a lot of you. We're talking about worthiness. And specifically, the sneaky way so many of us link our worth to what we achieve, what we produce, what we perform. I have a lot to say about this one, so we'll see you next week.
This is a good one. See you there.